look very carefully at the deepfakes these days, you can sort of see something is a little bit off. Even if you put a woman's voice to a woman's, like you did, that was your voice, I think, on my image. So that was an obvious one. But for the Elizabeth Warren, for the Trump, you could sort of tell. How far off are we until deepfakes really become completely convincing?
Yeah, if you put sufficient efforts nowadays, you can actually get to something that's perfectly real. The real question is, how can we get perfectly real deepfakes accessible to people? And I think we're probably, half a year to a year from there.
A half a year to a year, and at the same time, there's all these programs out there, particularly, social media efforts to try and detect deepfakes. It's almost like an arms race. So who's in the lead at this point?
Well, at this point, I would say it's, as you said before, it's still very easy. You can tell from the naked eye most of the deepfakes, but there are also examples that are, really, really convincing. And the only thing I can say is that I totally agree with Professor Hao Li that, soon it's going to get to the point where there's no way that, we can actually detect them anymore. So we have to look at other types of solutions.
I think I heard you say, how do we get the deepfakes accessible to people? Did I hear you correctly?
That's absolutely correctly, right?
So
right
that
now
would suggest to me that you think that's a good thing. And I see in the deepfakes a lot of danger. So explain to me why getting deepfakes accessible to people is a good thing, and give me some uses or contexts in which deepfakes would actually be a good thing.
Right. So first of all, I didn't say that getting deepfakes to people would be the right thing to do.
Okay.
But the underlying technology for deepfakes has a lot of important use cases that are, have positive applications. Most importantly, in the e-commerce sector, specifically for fashion, also for VR and AR. If you ever wanted to, create technologies that allows people to communicate immersively, then the only way is to have an ability to create photorealistic avatars of yourself. Very good examples are recent developments from Facebook Reality Labs, where they're showing how you're using photorealistic avatars to talk to each other, and it's using very similar deep learning type of methods.
At the same time, just to build off of Tyler's question, Hao, you got to think to yourself, oh, on the one hand, we can, for instance, put a deceased Paul Walker into a movie, which you actually worked on, and that may seem like something that's fun and good for the public, and certainly for entertainment purposes. And on the other hand, we can spread, tampered video of the President of the United States saying X, Y, and Z, which could really either harm the markets or, harm foreign affairs. And I'm wondering how, in your mind, you balance that.
Yes, I think that's a really good question. And I think a lot of people have this confusion about, having these tools that can allow anyone to manipulate videos is a bad thing. But I think the real question is, how can we detect, videos where the intention is, something that is used to deceive people, or something that has a, harmful consequence. And the intention is the thing that we should be looking at, not necessarily something has been manipulated. And as you said, there's a lot of, entertainment applications, or, things that are simply just for comedy or satire.
You're working, though, Hao, on furthering this technology so that deepfakes get better and better and better. So you're basically arming the bad guys as well as the good guys, right? Do you acknowledge that?
Well, I think, on the other hand, if you wanted to be able to detect deepfakes, you have to also see what the limits are, right? And if you need to build, AI frameworks that are capable of detecting things that are extremely real, and those have to be trained using these type of technologies. So in some ways, it's impossible to detect those if you don't know how they work.
Yeah.
And this is exactly the type of collaboration that we had with Hao Li, where we are internally playing this cat and mouse game in order to improve the detection of deepfakes.
I want to go back to something. I think that's a very interesting point, that in other words, to detect them and disarm the deepfakes, you have to know how they're made, and you have to understand what goes into them. You said earlier that one of the possible positive outcomes would be conversations among avatars. Why is that? Why do we need avatars to talk to each other?
Right.
Or am I just really just
way,
not getting it? I'm sorry.
Well, yeah. Well, there's a lot of studies where it basically shows that video conferencing is ineffective. There's in the collaborative space where people have to interact face to face, and in the world we're living nowadays, people can't teleport themselves easily from one place to another. So if you want to enable this remote conversation between people and put them inside a same space, that's the whole idea. If we can create a virtual environment where people can talk immersively and feel like they're in the same space.
Hao, you're the CEO of Pinscreen, which is actually working with some retailers for some of the good applications that you had mentioned. But really, when you're thinking about the worst case scenario in terms of how this technology can be hijacked and perhaps weaponized, what crosses your mind?
Well, first of all, I don't necessarily think that it will get to that point, because there are many other factors that actually lead to the misuse of these type of video manipulation technologies. And first of all, we're not even putting our source codes out there that allow people, arming people. We're building very restricted applications where it's purely to create 3D avatars. On the other hand, one thing that what you're saying makes sense is that if people see that certain things are possible, then it wouldn't take long for other people to try to come up with their own technologies. And one of the examples that we've seen here, the app Zao, is a great example. I would not have thought that it would come up so early, where you have a deepfake type of technology where you can have such convincing results by just uploading a single input image.